Joy with the Unchained podcast. Today I got with me my good friend Peta, and special thanks to our sponsors Verison for making this happen. Hey Peta!
Hi Joy!
How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. So today we're going to talk about workplace stress. And the supply chain resiliency, and you know, you've been in supply chain for a long time, so you know how quickly you have to adapt to change, and you know, changing situations or emergencies, which in oil and gas, that's more commonly the issues, is the 2 a.m. emergencies that come up. But you know, nobody really ever talks about the stress that comes with that type of work. You know, and I know that's one thing that, you know, we're kind of having an issue with, in a sense, these days, is filling it with the talent gap, because the new talent doesn't want that stress. So I guess, you know, I know that you've been, you know, you work with companies to try to help give them solutions for their employees. Why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about what you do?
Thank you. Great introduction. I think, you know, just underlyingly, there is a big problem across industries, but supply chain, oil and gas, it's a big one, right?
Okay.
We see a lot of, we see upticks in burnout and stress among high stress industries, right? And so what I do is, I'm a founder of a company called Stressie. We focus on workplace wellness solutions. We have a tech-enabled version, but we also consult companies. And basically, it's really, at the end of it, it's helping companies manage stress better. And it can be employees that have to manage stress better, but also management, right? And then, you know, it's different layers of stress, right? You have like the in-company stress. You have the stress that the company is dealing with from like a social political level, a global level, an industry change level. But then you also have the micro stressors that employees face when they come to work and also at home. So you have all these layering stressors, and it all impacts your bottom line. It impacts your employees' well-being. It impacts the health of the company. And so we're really there to kind of dive in head on, understand what's causing the stress. And we do that in various ways. And then we help them achieve, or try to achieve, workplace well-being, healthier and better environments for people to be at.
So I'm in logistics and you've been in logistics, and we both know that it's, you know, I think I said this the other day when we were on the phone talking, that, you know, it's a thankless job, right? That you deliver on time. Nobody thanks you because you did your job, right? But if you don't, there's like a bazillion people on your back foaming at the mouth, needing something immediately, stuff like that. You know, and one thing I've noticed as part of my own mental health journey, right, is the effects of living in a state of constant survival mode at work, which is essentially what logistics is. You're in worst case scenario constantly. How much of that, in my opinion, I mean, that's kind of, but how much of that, I mean, are you seeing today? Is it still a significant amount? Is it more? I mean, with all the changes in climate, kind of tell me about what you're seeing.
Yeah, so we definitely saw in the workplace wellness world, we definitely saw an uptick in burnout, stress, psychological disorders such as depression, anxiety during COVID, right?
Yeah.
There was also a lot more, at the beginning of COVID, a lot more work-life balance. People were at home a little bit more with family, with support groups, so that kind of cushioned off a little bit. But then it started to get real, right? When people started feeling isolation. On top of that, the layering stressor of being in survival mode from an industry or a job that requires you to always be kind of
prepared for the worst.
Yeah. And you know this because, you know, when I was in logistics, I remember we always had to do like risk mitigation.
Yeah.
And I promise you that like the thing that ended up happening on the job site or while, you know, in transit was never anything we thought would happen. It was never accounted for. And I was like, oh my God, but I could have, like, how did I know the boiler was going to sink? What? You know, how did I mean, like, we're shipping, you know, HRSG units and, you know, boilers from China to
Here, yeah.
to Texas, and you're thinking, okay, I have 50 things that could go wrong. Like, why did this happen?
Yeah.
So I think just the nature of the industry is so volatile, and there is a lot of risk. And so, yes, our response system, right, or our nervous system reacts to that.
Okay.
And we're in a constant state, like you said, of survival. We're in survival mode. We're in fear, right? We're living in constant fear of like, what if this happens?
What if I don't deliver? What if I can't get the plant back up and running? Or get the goods to them to get, back up and running. That's funny because, you also worked in super heavy lift and transport like I did. And I had the running joke that I would always tell people, you do 2 years of planning and it all goes to shit the first day you go to move. Like the tires will pop, something will happen, police won't show up, and you're just standing there like, well, that was a great plan. But I mean, that's I guess something too is that resiliency of helping people find the positive.
So there's two things that I see there, right? There's the overlying, kind of stress-inducing cortisol level, complete survival mode that we're on, which already disrupts your nervous system. That's like, yes. There was a recent report by the CIPD, which is the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, that said 76% of supply chain workers, so workers in the supply chain industry, are unhappy at their jobs and dealing with burnout, stress, right? And this means that what are they doing? They're looking for other jobs, right? There's even more money to be lost in that case. So we, in America, if we zoom into America, American companies are always like, listen to the demand of the market, listen to things.
Capitalism. We're driven that way. Yeah.
But if that is your mantra, right, in life, if that's how businesses are run in America, why aren't you listening to your employees who are the producers of your company, really? If without them, you won't have any profit. Without your employees working hard, you won't have anything. So why not listen to that demand as well as the outside demand, right?
No, that's really important that you say that because I mean, in Houston, there's a really big market, but where I'm originally from, Buffalo, New York, when I got my very first job outside of college, my parents were like, "You're set for life. You'll be there for 25 years, and you'll never have to find another job." And and I'm like, "What in the world does that mean?" But companies in areas like Buffalo, which is a very great place, believe me, go Bills. But it's one of those, where else are you gonna go work? So we can treat you a certain way because where else are you gonna go work? Where in Houston, I mean, we saw during the pandemic, people job hop for more money. I mean, it was just, so I guess, with that culture, it's that culture that with American companies or American culture, we work to live, or we live to work. Yeah, we live to work. We don't work to live like other cultures. Yeah. So if they're not listening to their employees, I mean, eventually what's going to happen?
Well, so you said it, right? If you're a smaller organization, you're not that impacted by this because you're like, I'm small. Where else are you going to work? Right? But the American mentality is also, let's grow.
Yeah.
So you're not going to grow as effectively if you don't take care of your people. That's just the bottom line. Or if you do grow, it's unsustainable. There's a lot of companies I'm not going to name, big organizations that have had lawsuit over lawsuit. They have had, employee rights violations that keep losing people over and over. And I work with a specific tech company that's probably one of the biggest, hardware tech companies in the world. And yeah, they're listening and they provide the things that their employees want. And they have lower turnover in the tech space than any other tech company. And so at their mass level. So that just tells you like, hey, if, I like to say, and reference like a yoga quote, because, in yoga class, we like to say, listen to your body's whispers so you won't have to hear it scream.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right?
But that's, yeah, it makes
and
sense.
on a
Listen
macro
to
level,
your people.
listen to your people. So then you won't have to deal with the consequences later. You won't have to deal with high turnover, disengagement. There's just, people being absent because they're too stressed, right? And there's workplace stress, and then there's life and home stress, right? That's inevitable. And so it's really important to also have leaders who have empathy, right? And understand, hey,
Humility and empathy are missing.
gosh, they're missing a lot.
It really is, especially in supply chain, because it's. I mean, there's no rest for the weary.
Cutthroat.
I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true. I mean, especially in oil and gas, they want something and they need it like 2 days ago when they ask for it, like right now.
Customers are the same way,
Yes,
right?
customers expect you to deliver no matter what, and that comes down to also supply chain making sure they have the widgets or whatever they're selling or the manpower to be able to produce. And if you don't have that because you have high turnover, then your shareholders aren't happy.
Yeah, so I feel like sustainability, building upon that is really important. It doesn't happen overnight. Change is hard.
Now, sustainability, we're not talking about the environment. We're talking about the
We're talking about workplace
environment. Okay.
Like doing things sustainably, right?
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Sustainability also environmentally is very important. But sustainability in the systems that you create, right?
Right.
Making them sustainable. That's important. And that can translate into employees, right? Work schedules, deadlines, something that I've done in my company, and that I encourage people to do in other companies is, hey, when you have a meeting, right? Yeah, you can have an hour-long meeting. Let people go 5 minutes early so that they can have
next meeting.
not only get to the next meeting, but good leadership is, hey, we've already been speaking for 50 minutes, 55 minutes, and now I want you to go take your time, take a mini break, do a quick reset, do something that feels 3 minutes of your time, take a few deep breaths, reset, do something, get your mind out of this and take care of yourself, because research has shown that these micro breaks actually throughout the day really cushion and are protective against, chronic stress and,
yeah, because they can get up and walk away.
Exactly.
You can walk away and go to a different setting, right? I guess
like that.
basically you're just changing one environment for another. That's probably a lot more peaceful.
Well, you're basically
resetting.
resetting your nervous system, especially after a high engaging meeting, right? Where maybe something was said that you didn't like, or maybe there's more pressure on the company now or the team, and it's really important to, for good leadership to acknowledge that. When leaders acknowledge, hey, we're in a hard time right now, let's get through it together, it's way better received than, hey, this is on y'all and we have to deliver.
Yes,
I've heard.
Okay, that's two totally different things, and you're right, because I have actually said that, like, they don't care, you have to deliver, and that actually, and I hear that, and now I'm hearing it from you, and I'm like, man, I used to say that all the time, but now when you say it the different way, we're in this together. You're saying the exact same thing, but in a way that's inclusive of yourself being, say, the leader or the manager. So you're there for your people. But yeah, I mean, so here's a note for me that I just learned something that I used to tell the new people in logistics all the time. The one thing you have to do is deliver, and you have to deliver safely. And that is it. On time, deliver. That's all they care about. And for that, that's putting all that stress. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I'm sorry, people, but I did that too.
And we all learn so much from psychology, right? And research in that space, and social psychology. Just like there's I don't know if you've ever heard of the Gottman Institute. Yeah. So it's a foundation, an organization, and they do research on couples. Okay. And this institute can predict at a 98% accuracy, just by the way that a couple interacts with each other in the course of 45 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever the meeting is, if they're going to get divorced or not.
Okay, I don't think I would want to do that.
Can you?
That would be too scary for me.
It's scary, but if you think about it on a macro level, these organizations, it's a relationship that you have with your employees.
Well, it's true.
So I am married to the company, right? And if there's no clear communication
Between you and your husband, yeah.
and between me and my husband company,
Oh, sorry. Okay, yes.
right? And because then we're gonna take the relationship and transfer it now to the work relationship that you have with your employer. Your employer and you are married to each other, y'all. You come to work for 8 hours a day or more. Now it's getting to 12, 14-hour shifts, right? For a corporate American worker. And you get to a point where you have no communication between each other because they don't know what you want. They don't know what you're stressed about. They don't know your needs. And then you don't know the values. You don't know the initiatives. You don't know what's going on. All that's being talked about right now is like pressure, deadlines, projects, innovation, right? But that's not the only thing that needs to be talked about.
We have to deliver, right? But how we deliver.
How do we do it?
Right. So that's a really a good thing you brought up because, man, I never even thought about it like that. I didn't think about it like that. Wow, my brain just went on that one. But no, so what were you saying? 76% or 77% supply chain stress they have stress.
They're on the risk of burnout.
Do you think it's increased more because of our current climate, or or the culture, or do you think that we just kind of got away with the COVID and people got a taste of what life should really be like, where you're not you work to live, you don't live to work.
Yeah. I think a lot of things have changed and are changing. For example, you have AI anxiety now.
Yeah.
So many people in the workplace they have AI anxiety and they think, AI is going to take over their job, or they're not equipped to handle technology in that way. And so you have all these, you have tariffs that are impacting your organization. You have insecurity, you have inflation in the world, there's wars, so there's a lot of things impacting people. And I think another aspect of that is there's not a ton of resilience work being done either, because as a society we have dealt with a lot of stuff, right? But how can we remember, how can we train our brain we can do hard things and then understand what's actually impacting us the most? For example, there is different kinds of stress, right?
Yes.
There are stressors that are chronic and they lead to illness. There are stressors that are known as eustress, right? It's eustress, it's good stress. It's stress that leads to resilience. And so what I like to do when I talk to companies and talk to people, or, even with the platform we're building, is help people understand and become aware of what is the good stress in your life? What is the stress that you actually need to be more resilient? And then what is the stress that's actually making you sick and making your body hurt and making you irritable, making you hate life, right? Leading to clinical depression and that kind of stuff, anxiety. There's a ton of stuff that we need to unpack, and it's not easy. But the wellness space is growing, especially in the workplace.
Well, and I think that's great. You brought up an important point that people feel like AI is going to replace their jobs. And I think if it's presented properly, it's actually going to help their jobs.
Oh my God, yes.
For example, our sponsor, Verison, they have an AI platform for supply chain. And in most cases, yes, you would get, say, a typical person that it helps manage it, your inventory and stuff like that. And a lot of people feel like they're going to be replaced by AI. And so I guess is that a lot of the conversations that are happening now, where people are very like, hey. So is that what you're seeing now? Is people are more stressed about that too?
Yeah, they're stressed about that, and then they have AI overload, right?
Okay.
Because there's a lot of let me teach you this thing about AI, let me do this, let me do that, instead of focusing on like, hey, right now my job isn't impacted, let me do the best I can, right, with what I have.
Or this is going to help me do a better job.
Or let me, help me.
Yeah, but no, you're right,
Like,
because instead of fighting it,
yes.
but through that then comes humility and empathy from your leader, right?
Exactly. It's all connected.
So
to be honest,
it's
it's
a
all
circle
connected.
of life.
It's a circle. AI at this point, like I'm building, I have a tech company as well. Like there's a tech portion of our company, and we use a lot of AI. We're implementing AI into a stress management system, right? And it would be really contradicting for me to be like, I don't want AI to help me, make my job easier. I use AI every day. I use different AI tools every day.
Right.
My team completely relies on AI. We're more lean because we use AI.
But
right?
that's what I'm saying, yes.
Because we're a very small company.
But it simplifies things so that you can focus on the things that matter, that are most impactful. I mean, yes, say for example, your inventory AI, through supply chain, stuff like that, yes, it'll help companies save money for unneeded items or not having too much inventory on hand versus not enough and all that. But think about it, I guess that's the thing. Are you seeing a lot more training now on how to, is for supply chain employees, are you seeing a lot more training now from leadership saying we need to know how to present this to our employees?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And they're asking for that. They're asking for training on like, hey, how do we not just present AI to our employees, but how do we navigate the conversation of uncertainty in the workplace, right? With all these factors.
Well, and that's the thing. Supply chain is, like we said in the beginning, it's so uncertain. I mean, you can have an agreement, pricing agreement, which has a clause in it that says it's subject to change if the market conditions drastically change. And so that's the thing. I mean, so you have people running around, especially right now. I mean, I'm just. My heart hurts for them.
Yeah. Look at gas prices. I mean, just in that, right? Vessel, you're shipping
your
something.
Bunkers,
everything relies on things that could be volatile in this industry. And so it's really important. I think that's why when I was in logistics, and that's one of the things that really spearheaded me to start my work now, is I just saw burnout after burnout. I saw substance abuse. I saw, substance dependency on, medications and also caffeine. Caffeine isn't horrible.
Well, no, but
if you're drinking 7 cups of caffeine a day, there's something going on.
If you're on your 7th monster, that might be a problem.
Might be a problem. Let's just, so I just saw, and this isn't just, I would see when I worked at 3M, I was a solution specialist for adhesives in the industrial industry. So in the industrial space. So I would go, and my clients were, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, like all these big names. And I would go into the production floor, with all my PPE on, and let's see how this works, and let me see how the sausage is made. So I go into production floors and like walk the floors with production, and it was so awesome to see. But even then, I would see accidents. And the production managers were always like, they knew I was into wellness even then. They'd be like, Peta, I know you're here to sell us tape. But like, can you come and do like a meditation for my like employees too? And I'm like, yes. And really, like, I always saw that, and I just started to listen to the demand. I'm like, because my gifts from my clients were always wellness related. It was always essential oils or like sleep masks. Like I just gave it to me. I love for people to be well. I just want to enhance, your life.
300 billion. I mean,
it's a lot of loss.
And if they invested in a wellness program for a sliver of that cost.
For example, let's take construction.
Oh gosh.
I think the statistic for construction workman comp claims is, I don't want to, don't quote me on this, but I think it's like $150 million a month that they're spending on workman comps because of so much.
This is cumulative, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Because of so much, danger. And then also construction workers are very stressed.
Yeah.
Right?
Deadlines, they have to get it done.
Deadlines, but also, socioeconomical factors. And so there's so much overlying complex layers of stress there that, you think of, okay, let's like zoom out. The biology of stress is that when you are stressed out about something, your brain goes into like you have tunnel view into that stressor. You're only focusing on that. So everything else, you're not expanding your periphery. You're literally just thinking of that. So you're not focusing.
You're not looking at the big picture.
You're not looking at safety around your area. Yeah. You're not looking at where you're stepping.
And oil and gas, that's huge.
For field work. It's huge for field work.
Huge for oil and gas.
Huge.
Because, I mean, can you imagine being on a rig? I mean, I'm just saying, like, where you've got a lot of moving parts, right, and stuff. So I don't want to really get into the nuances of that or how stressful that is. I mean, I spent a lot of time on a job site myself, but yeah, no, I mean, it's important. It's and I know this is kind of a little bit not supply chain, but really, it's important to talk about stress because like you said, people are losing money and people either burnt out, not happy, there are various things where if they had less stress or a way to coping mechanisms that are healthy.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's stress is inevitable. It's always going to be there. Things are going to stress us out. That is the law of the land.
Well, and some people's stress is greater to one than the other. Yeah. So that's where the empathy and everything, but also too, understanding like, hey, you could say, well, so-and-so, that guy, he's a little extra. Everything's more with him. But then you have Susie over here that's like, she doesn't complain about anything, but then something happens and she just loses her mind over it. Yeah. And she's been bottling all that up. So
it hits people differently.
Yeah.
And people need, better ways to cope. And they need better ways to solve what's going on too. Right?
And that's
what
important.
is it?
Right.
Yeah. Like understanding, having that awareness, having that time to have that awareness. Because I can't tell, a single mom with 2 jobs and 2 kids to go out and meditate. You'd be like, what?
I could probably get a minute in,
But how do we equip people with practical tools that they can implement into their daily lives without making this whole wellness? Because, America loves to commercialize stuff. Oh my God, it's like the best at that.
That's how we make money.
Yeah. And so wellness,
that's why we need such huge houses and big vehicles, because we've got to haul around all our crap now. Well, but that's good. It's good for the economy,
It's good for the economy, but then you have this wellness wash that kind of blankets what's really happening. And so you have people saying, you have wellness stress, okay? And you basically have people who are like, oh my God, I'm so stressed, but I'm going to go to a yoga class tonight. And then you get into the conversation. You're like, oh, okay. And then how do you feel after yoga? Oh, I feel so good. And I'm like, oh, that's wonderful. But what about that stressor?
Exactly.
And then it's like, oh, okay, what are you doing about that stressor?
So the micro breaks. Perfect example right there.
Perfect example. You deal with you reset your nervous system, but then, hey, what are you doing? Let's go back to that. What, like therapy, but on a macro level.
Right.
What are you doing about that stressor? If it stresses me out to see dirty dishes in my sink, and I go to a yoga class or a meditation. I love meditation and yoga. I've been a practitioner for the last 20 years, or maybe now 25, and I love yoga.
Right.
And I think it's an amazing practice. But I also feel that because of the way the American public is, they just rely on that. They rely on all these wellness hacks instead of actually solving the stressors that they have or learning how to build resilience off of them. So there's a lot of just kind of like, we could dive very deep into the science of stress and the biology of stress and then how to manage it. But it's a big problem right now.
So it really just, if I understand what you're saying, we're going to have to wrap it up in just a minute. Yeah. But if I understand correctly, basically it's that companies need to be more involved in helping employees find stress coping skills or some, helping them with their, in supply chain, right? Helping them as a we program, not an I thing, because that's a lot of times what happens is there, especially in logistics, is you have to do this. So I'm really thankful that we had this conversation. I didn't realize those numbers are so big.
They're huge.
I mean, they are, and that's a lot of money. I mean, that's a lot of money that impacts a company's bottom line, right? If you don't have happy employees, but especially in supply chain, because they're the ones that create the savings for the company by their negotiating. Like their job is to save the company money by sourcing and delivering.
Right. By being the project manager, by managing a project, right? You are literally, and imagine that. Imagine with a statistic of 76% of them being on the
brink of
burnout. That means 3 out of 4 people in your company are walking around unhappy, looking for another job, completely disengaged, right? And just basically survival mode.
Yeah.
And so imagine if you turn that around.
How productive it would be.
How productive your company would get.
Yeah.
I mean, just because when people are happy, when people are engaged, when people, they're more productive, they're happier people. And not only that, I look at it as a global thing. If you leave your workplace super stressed, you're going to be a horrible person on the road, leading to road rage and accidents. You're going to be a horrible person at home, right? Imagine if you went to a place for 8 hours a day at least that you're spending your time there, that uplifted you, that understood you, where management was actually understanding you and not making your life worse. Then you'd be like, wow, there's so much we could.
I've had a few bosses though that were just like that. I was blessed. I was so blessed to have them, and I'm glad that we had this talk, because it just further solidifies what great bosses they were to me.
I love that.
Because
I've had some really good that's leaders too.
Yeah, it's great. And I can't say any names, but we know
we know who they are.
We know who they are.
Yeah.
But no, I that's about all the time that we have for today. I'm sorry. There's so much more we could talk about. But no, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for spending a little bit of time with me and telling me about this. And these statistics are incredible. But I really appreciate it. And special thanks to our sponsor, Verison, for the podcast today. And we'll see y'all next time.
Thanks for listening to OGGN, the world's largest and most listened to podcast network for the oil and energy industry. If you like this show, leave us a review and then go to OGGN.com to learn about all our other shows. And don't forget to sign up for our weekly newsletter. This show has been a production of the Oil and Gas Global Network.
Oh, that was so great.